James, take me through your personal arc from where you went from, I guess, athlete or someone training, someone lifting to a coach, because we all kind of have our own story. So I'd love you to break it down and
All right.
just kind of land on where you're at now.
I'll I'll try and make it not too long because
Man,
it
you
could
have all
be
the time in the
long.
world. All the time in the world.
Coaching's been only I guess my only real job. I started coaching tennis at 14, I think it was, part time, my local tennis club. So like tennis was like my main sport growing up and everything. Like love, just like breathe tennis. That's all I wanted to do. But started coaching that at 14 and kind of that was my part time stuff. I wanted to go eventually be like a physio. I think because I just wanted to work in sport. My grades were too shit to get into physio, so I ended up doing so. There's like a faculty within AUT University in New Zealand, and they have like basically health and sciences. And basically, my goal was to do the first semester at under sport and recreation, and then transfer over when my grades were good enough to continue on because the classes were basically the same. And then we had, I think it was in one of the first or second weeks, the faculty member John Cronin, who runs sport and recreation, came in and just talked about exercise science. Like did a whole presentation during the class on exercise science. And I looked at my mate. We were there because we both didn't get good grades, and we were there doing the same thing. And we're like, that is what we want to do, exercise science. So that was just kind of like, that was it through there. So, going through uni, did my internships, worked. Okay, anyone who I guess who's worked in professional sport understands that you work for free for years trying to land gigs, and especially like as you know in New Zealand's small. There's only
So
so many
small.
sports teams, etc. So I was at the Warriors for, I guess, mid 2011 when they had their good finals runs all the way through to end of 2014. Basically working for free, trying to just continue, learning, trying to find something, trying to land some kind of role. At the same time was coaching one of the local rugby league clubs in their premier grade stuff, and then just basically said yes to everything. So I ended up doing like New Zealand, Fiji when they were doing like trials in Sydney for the Rugby World Cup for the Fijian team. And none of this is paid. This is just
It's crazy
it's
that
for fun.
you're working at a national level, and like even like you bring up the Warriors and you're training for free. That baffles me.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's
That's just how.
NRL. It's so
Well,
professional
you start
externally.
interning. Yeah, you start interning, so it's always going to be free. I landed a role with the academy, and then that was still free,
It's crazy.
which is crazy.
You can't call that a role. Almost.
Yeah, it's like
It's usually paid.
a
Yeah.
passion,
Yeah.
So did all that, and then got lucky enough that one of the coaches I was friends with there that was working, his brother was a player agent, and he was a player agent for various teams around the world. And he just came to me one day. He's like, "Hey, his brother, there's a role in Romania with a pro club there. Do you want it?" And I was like, fuck yeah, send me whatever." And then I sent my CV over to them. They sent me a contract and like no interview, nothing. Like that was it. And I was like, oh shit! Like first full, like all I want. I didn't care. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about business. I didn't care about anything. All I wanted to do was just coach at a professional level full time, which, in hindsight, is the only thing that's probably really going to help you make it in professional coaching, but also at the same time, it fucks up everything else because you're barely making money and stuff like that. You're kind of more just getting the experience. It ends up being like a young man's game. But I went over to Romania beginning in 2015. That was my first taste of like running my own professional team basically. But that was a shit show, corruption. We had about half the squad was foreign, so like Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa were probably the main ones. They didn't do any of our visas. We all overstayed. Then we actually had to fly home like near the end of the season. So that was a short stint back in New Zealand. Start my own academy, which was doing all right. And then I was doing the New Zealand Kiwi Ferns rugby league team. So we had the NRL nines and then the Anzac Test. Again, not paid. but but the thing is, right, not paid, but that is what allowed me to get into America for working there for a paid role, just because I'll touch on that in a second anyway. But anyway, I did those. That was like 2016. And then the gig applied kind of whatever it was, a gig in America with the Major League Rugby, which is now struggling. But this was the pilot year. So the year just before the Major League Rugby started, the professional league here in the States. And the coach that I was with in Romania, he became the assistant coach there. The player agent that I worked with initially was also helping them. And so the player agent and the assistant coach were both giving my CV to the head coach. He didn't know it was the same person, and finally figured out it was the same person. And I got that gig after losing out a bunch of interviews in New Zealand. So then moved to the States, did 2 years in the States, then got a call from the Romanian national team to join them, and also the old club that I was with initially, where they didn't do a lot of visas. And then went over to the national team, signed for the World Cup, signed the contract, and then Romania got disqualified before the World Cup. So I got to go over to Romania and build for the next one partway through until COVID. And then we also did the sevens for the Olympic preparation there. And then 2020 hit. Everyone knows what happens there. Ended up being stuck there for a while. Got back to New Zealand. My wife and I loved it here in the States so much that we just applied for green cards, came back, and now we're just doing our own thing online. So that's been the long journey so far.
Wow. So how have you found it, being based in States as opposed to living in back in New Zealand?
We love it here, eh? Just like lifestyle's nice, and in terms of like, I guess you could say networking opportunity and stuff, it's good. Obviously, it's a lot bigger being over here. It made it good coming here rugby wise. So like, there's actually quite a big rugby community here in the States, especially in Austin and Texas. Here, there's like a really big rugby community. And funny enough, the weightlifting gym my wife and I train out of, we met the owner there, and then his gym is rented on the property of like a chiropractic clinic. And the guy that owns that and owns everything has a rugby field out the back that he also owns for his own club. And we actually had an event there back in like 2017. I didn't even realize. But now connected all back up with this guy who's now has, his own rugby academy and wants to do and stuff like that. So potentially might get a little bit more involved in rugby again, but I don't know whether or not I will. But yeah, it's cool. It's nice. It's just, it's unique as well because, coming from New Zealand and having a rugby background, it automatically gives you kind of like this little leg up or step up or whatever when you're talking to a lot of these people in rugby. So
it's like
cool.
inbred to our DNA. You just grow up with a rugby ball around. So
yeah.
So where do you think their state of rugby is at in comparison to New Zealand? I know it's probably hard to draw a line, but like, what's the differences of like how they understand the sport? Because like even myself, I played since I was 5 years old all the way up until I was probably around 18. It's just what we do, on the weekend, just throw a ball around with my mates. It's second nature.
Here it is. The thing is, right now, rugby is kind of struggling worldwide. You see the competitions like Premiership Rugby, you got teams folding, you got pretty poor turnouts, I guess, in New Zealand for provincial. Even Super Rugby doesn't look great. Basically, you got like South Africa and France that are like thriving, and kind of everyone else is not so much. USA is, I would say, is really struggling in the general landscape. They've had how many pro competitions all fold? So like before Major League Rugby, they had PRO Rugby. I don't know how long that lasted, but I think that died in like 2015 or 2016. And then Major League Rugby started in 2018. And then this year, I think they're going for the 8th or 9th season, but like I think 3 or 4 teams have already folded going into the season. So they're struggling in that aspect. But I think the problem is people see, like, when you're outside the US, and like I thought the same thing. Most people probably do. They go, US has all these college football players. They have this huge population of athletes. They would be so good at rugby if they just got 1% of the population, blah, 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 blah. Or they just need 1% of the population to like rugby, And it's proven probably one of the most difficult thing to get people on board to watch rugby. And there's multitude of factors into that, like, broadcasting quality and where they're playing and their marketing and all that kind of shit and the money they can actually put into it. But it's also hard for players to transition. Like, we have players come from football within the team, but the game's so different. The skills don't transfer because you've got players who would just be defensive players or just be whatever. Defensive players don't touch the ball. now they're now they're expected to come into rugby, catch, pass, run, hit rucks, and then and then understand basically a whole new game.
And be on the field for like 80 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Play both ways, basically. It's tough for them to. It's not saying that they can't. It's just a hard transition, and you see the same thing with guys like obviously people like track athletes and stuff like that too. The fast and people Carlin Isles will be like a prime example of someone who made it into sevens. But you have there's a difference between what's happening with track speed and what's happening on the field. And you'll have guys like track guys, they'll tuck the ball under their arm and sprint straight line. But then what you see after that is they have no options to what they're going to do with the ball after that. It's if they see someone, they can only stop in a straight line, and then they have to make a decision to what's happening. And obviously, that's fast in track speed, but it's slow in game speed. And so these are skills that are not developed and take a long time to develop. And until they really push like youth programs and have like a proper pathway from like youth to like middle, high school, college, and then maybe into whatever it is, I think they're going to struggle to really push rugby forward. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough here for that unless they put that into place. But I don't know how they're going to do that. That'll be something for USA Rugby to figure out.
So what made you focus on combat fighting at the moment or combat sports?
I started jiu-jitsu. A friend started teaching me and a few mates at our weightlifting gym in 2014, I think it was. We literally just had mats that we had stacked up on the floor. It's like a warehouse gym. It was just a, what would you call it? Warehouse gym with a weightlifting club and then just like a general members area and like area for like sleds and stuff like that. And just on Wednesday night, we'd just throw mats down and then he would just teach us just basics of jiu-jitsu every week. And then we entered the Nogi Nationals after like 5 months of training just to
That's a wild move.
Yeah, shit. Won my first match and lost my second. But I was like, that was kind of like the catalyst of me like really enjoying combat sports because I've always wanted to do something, but I was competing in weightlifting, which made it quite difficult. And then I've just kind of tried to train as I've traveled around. So trained a bit more in Romania when I was there, and then here in the States, and then back in New Zealand, and here in the States again. So that's just been kind of, I've just really enjoyed it. And the translation from training rugby players to combat sports is pretty similar. I mean, you could even say just training all sports is pretty similar just because the principles are the same, but things just kind of change within that. And then specifically combat and rugby have like really similar aspects to them. So it's kind of an easier transition. And then combat sports as well kind of still is relatively behind the times in terms of what's happening in the strength and conditioning world. And that's just because it hasn't been professionalized that long and you don't have like a team aspect like you do in rugby, AFL, soccer, etc., where you have everyone's together, paid full time, 24/7 all year. Whereas in combat sports, you might have a fighter with their coaches, and he might just go off to his local personal trainer for a couple of sessions a week and come back. So it's an area that has needed improving, and it definitely is. There's more and more kind of people coming into it, more and more people giving good information. So it's slowly getting better in that space.
Yeah, and you're trying to bring like the evidence-based scientific world, like a spotlight into the combat world, because I can imagine a lot of it is quite bro sciencey, because like I'm doing a similar thing in the fitness industry, and even though fitness is, there is great knowledge, there's great doctors and professors and even just personal trainers. Like for me, I'm in a ton of research reviews and stuff that I like to dip my head into weekly to make sure I'm not spouting bullshit as well. But there's a lot. But then on the other side, there's a ton of just absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
Just bro sciencey. This works for me. This is going to work for you. Just bench bro and just eat heaps. Like that's still there. It's still prevalent, especially like in the male community. What stuff are you seeing in combat sports that needs to get filtered out?
It's more so I think it's more so the messaging than the actual training. It's well, let's just go with that for now. It's more so the messaging, just so I don't throw everything out with the bathwater. But I guess most people will be familiar with like road work within combat sports, where you're just going for long, slow runs, most days of the week. People will search up, like Mike Tyson training routine. It's like 5 a.m., 10 miles or whatever it is every day. It's not so much that it's not wrong, because there's very rarely things are wrong in training. It's just more the application, how it's prescribed and the reasons it's prescribed that becomes the issue. Because if we go down, how deep do you want to go with this? Like how...
Well, like what I can see immediately is like it's not really super specific to the sport. Like the principle of specificity is already kind of gone out the window. Like if you're boxing, for example, like Mike Tyson, you're not necessarily running for hours,
Yeah.
Like there's rounds.
Yeah, for sure. Even if you don't go down the specific route, most of the time the physiology is missing from a lot of this. Where, okay, I'll just dive into it. Hopefully the listeners don't mind. But when we talk like conditioning, it might actually be helpful for some of the people as well who are just doing maybe general fitness stuff and conditioning stuff. But typically when people talk like, I'm trying to train the aerobic energy system, so people will go, okay, boxing, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is it's an aerobic sport because it's multiple rounds in this many minutes, whatever it is. And so automatically when someone hears I need to train aerobically, they automatically go to low intensity steady state cardio. That is aerobic training, because anything low intensity is going to be aerobic because it's under where that lactate kind of spikes. So I'm not getting, I don't want to, I don't want to say lactic acid.
Yeah,
It's a horrible word. So don't say but where lactate spikes, so people will be like, okay, I'm going to stay under this area. It means that I'm training aerobically and I'm becoming more aerobically fit because now I am potentially targeting a higher VO2 max. Obviously, that has been the trendiest thing probably in the last couple of years too, around performance and longevity with VO2 max, which is already a little misnomer as well. But you have that. But what it doesn't address is what's happening at the muscular level, which is likely the limiting factor for most people when we're talking about most sports, but we'll keep it to combat sports to make it easier. Yeah. And when we're talking about that muscular level, typically we're talking mostly just about mitochondria. We can throw in capillarization as well, so actually having blood come into the muscle and then transfuse over, but that's a little more tricky to figure out what's going on there. But within mitochondria, you're typically looking at how well does your muscle use oxygen, versus at the heart level, you're looking at how well you're able to deliver oxygen. Low intensity work typically biases that delivery, and then higher intensity exercise typically biases kind of like that oxygen use. And when people think of aerobic, they think everything kind of works as a switch. They'll categorize it as aerobic, anaerobic, lactic, or anaerobic glycolytic, and then alactic. And they'll be like, these are the three energy systems. I need to train each energy system separately so I maximize whatever it is, without understanding or without knowing that all three energy systems are always working. So for those of you who are listening to this while you're sitting there, you're producing lactate right now as you sit there, which means that you are using the anaerobic glycolytic energy system while you are sitting there. And everything works together with your training. And just because you do something hard like a 10-second sprint does not make it anaerobic. It cannot be anaerobic because there is oxygen being used. And if anyone wants a really good visualization of it, I showed it on my Instagram recently. Now you can check some of those graphs out there. Yeah, so check that out there. But basically, all three systems work together. You'll see like a sharp drop in oxygen within the muscle during, say, like a 10-second sprint, which means oxygen is being used. And you're kind of playing along an intensity spectrum where your intensity spectrum is basically dictating the fuel you're going to use, so like basically fat or carbs, but obviously not either or because nothing happens in isolation. And then you're also looking at, you're biasing towards maybe oxygen delivery in the heart, or you're biasing towards peripheral function, which would be at the muscle and be able to use the oxygen. And then you're basically manipulating conditioning to be able to target those adaptations so you can then essentially do high intensity rounds in the ring, on the mats, whatever it is. And it's very difficult to do that from a purely low intensity setup within your conditioning, because you miss so much. You miss so much of the peripheral or the muscular adaptations for their oxygen use, you can get them, but you've got to do so much volume to be able to get there. It's going to take away from your family life, your training, the energy you have to actually train as well, because you're going to be doing 2+ hour sessions. You're basically training like an ultra marathoner at that point. And so at some point you need intensity to start pushing that adaptation. And that's kind of, I guess that's kind of the message that I'm trying to get out there around conditioning, because there's just so much on zone 2 and VO2 max. It's just like, it's nuts. It's just all permeated from the top health influences and kind of come down through to sports performance.
So what would you recommend? Like, let's just say someone's like, I'm going to go for a 2-hour run or a 1-hour run. Like, what would you say, just for combat sports, like, would be a better replacement for a run?
Yeah. So it's going to depend on a few different things, but at face value, the easiest thing you could do is just split that 1-hour run up into faster repeats. So if you're going, let's just say someone runs 10K in that hour, just as an example, maybe you're doing like 2K and then 3K and then making me do math on here now. Just do 3K, 5K, and then like a 2K or whatever. And then just splitting that up into fast intervals and then running that hour at a faster pace. Because there's a trade-off with intensity and volume. So if you're doing low intensity work, for you to spur adaptation, you need to increase the volume because your intensity is capped. The more intensity you put in, the less volume you need. It's the same as lifting weights, you know. I'm sure a lot of people understand that. Like, if you're lifting 90% of your 1RM, you're not going to be doing the same total volume in terms of sets and reps as you're going to do if you're doing 60-70% 1RM. The same thing happens kind of in the conditioning world. So splitting those up, a little more intensity is just going to start pushing your conditioning into a better place.
So if you're doing, like, let's make this a little bit of a case study. Like, if you're training, so actually let's just put myself in there, right? So I train jiu-jitsu a couple of times a week. I love no-gi, so I align my schedule to hit the no-gi sessions so I can...
My gym is no-gi, submission wrestling. That's all I do.
Mate, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Yeah, I've literally changed my schedule to align with the no-gi schedule so that I not avoid the gi, but I just don't enjoy it as much. It feels less, like the gi just feels less dynamic.
Yeah.
It feels less realistic, like, you know, in the real world. Not that I'm ever going to...
Fingers.
Yeah, like that, and you get like gi burn and all this kind of stuff in your face. Anyway, and then you just get stuck in close guard. You're like, what are we doing here, man? Let's just, come on. So I like no-gi, right? I train 2 times a week. A great week, which hasn't happened, to be honest, would be 3. But anyway, a couple times a week. And like, let's just say I have 2 or 3 other sessions to add in. So with like not just conditioning, with strength and conditioning, like how would you spread that out? Just for example, for me, like if I still want to train, but I want to.
If you're training jiu-jitsu twice a week, you just put anything anywhere else where it fits. Because it's not going to it's pretty much not going to negatively affect you because you're just training so little. Like I'm the same. Like I get in the gym 0 to 2 times a week if I'm lucky. Depending, and then obviously everything else is just kind of on top in terms of weightlifting and conditioning and stuff.
Yeah.
But for most people who are maybe more on the competitive side or recreationally competitive or just kind of really looking to make their jiu-jitsu kind of like their priority, you're typically looking at 2 to 3 gym sessions a week. And I say 3 because I think grappling sports can get away with a third, and they are strength and hypertrophy have far greater advantages in grappling than it does in, say, striking arts or even MMA to some extent. And I think there are some actual potential negative adaptations within striking arts if you're doing too much of that. But within grappling, like, I mean, as you know, as most people know who do the sport, you know, being big and strong, it just helps.
It helps.
So, or fortunately. So 2 to 3 times. And within those sessions, I like to structure it. I have a very simple blueprint that I like to kind of provide, I guess, people who are not, I guess, starting or just trying to figure out how to structure their programs. Obviously, there's a whole host of different ways and more advanced ways of doing it. But you just structure it from fast to slow, in terms of fast movements to slower movements in your program. So, for example, you might just start with your general warm-up. I like to pick like 3 exercises, low-level exercises that addressing things that I can't get done in, say, a 2-day-a-week schedule. maybe that address previous injury areas or commonly injured areas, or maybe mobility restrictions. So it could be anything like say thoracic extension or rotation stuff. It could be some neck work, could be some like low level ankle plyometric work, and just do it in a circuit 2 to 3 times. And that would be essentially be your general warm up. And it means that you're not wasting like 5-10 minutes standing on a treadmill or whatever when you could be doing something that's addressing something there. Then after that, you go into some kind of jumps or plyometrics or throws. And this is kind of like your fastest work of the day. Box jumps, overhead throws, whatever it is. And then I like to go into, say, like what I would just quote a full body power exercise. So it could be like a weightlifting derivative. It could be like a loaded jump. It could even be heavier throws, overhead weightlifting derivatives. Anything like that where you're moving some kind of load relatively quickly. Then you'll go into your heavy lower body movement. Don't care what it is. Leg press, squat, deadlift, whatever you decide to pick there. A relatively heavy upper body push, superset with some kind of upper body pull. And then finish with core grip carry. And you don't have to do all 3. It's just to give you an idea of what you can put there. So if you're doing like a farmer's walk, you're kind of addressing all 3. But you could just do grip work, you could just do whatever ab work someone wants to do, or some kind of carry stuff. And that's just like a general blueprint. And then obviously you can make a more upper body focused version of that, where it could just be, instead of doing the lower body strength first, you would do, instead of doing the heavy lower body, you would do like a heavy upper body, and then you would do like a single leg movement near the end of the program. And it just kind of it gives you the opportunity to train all the qualities that you likely need, with some kind of like athleticism built into it, because you can get very stuck in just kind of like squat, bench, deadlift. And then you can modify the volume based on what you're after. So if you want more, say if you want to do more of your speed power based stuff, you just do more sets of the stuff at the beginning and less of the stuff at the end, and vice versa. If you're really focusing on strength and size, you would maybe only do 1 or 2 sets of the stuff in the beginning, and you would just hammer the stuff at the end. So it gives you a bit of flexibility in that. And then obviously there's a billion other ways of doing it, but that's just like an easy way of getting that right. And then if you are an older grappler or more beat up, and like some of those maybe jumping and plyometric movements don't really sit well, I tend to like to do kind of like reverse that order. So you do your heavier stuff first. So you might squat heavy first, and then if you go do your jumps and stuff after that, it usually feels really good. So obviously nothing is set in stone. You just kind of manipulate things based on,
Yeah, I think that's quite easy to understand, because you're literally just like turning up sets up and down. It's easy. You're not adding in exercises, having to think of that, and then just kind of rearranging the order. So if you just have everything out in front of you, you can just kind of like reframe it like that, which is easy to understand. And I find that, well, the people that I've rolled with and kind of moved around with, a lot of them aren't actually lifting. But like I'm not at a heavily competitive gym, but even competitors, like they're not really lifting.
Like training so much jiu-jitsu, they just don't bother.
Which is, it's very technique based, so it's obviously valid. But like when you roll with someone that lifts, it does feel different. And I guess I'm someone that lifts, so people have felt that rolling with me. But I haven't. I've rolled with a couple of people that lift, and yeah, it's problematic. Like just trying to move their legs and trying to move their body, or standing up, just trying to double leg them or something. Like it's like, even if they don't have that skill base, they have that physicality and usually that coordination that comes with it. And it's just, it makes a big difference. So are there things that you've changed your mind on from when you first started as a coach with training? I'd love to know that.
The conditioning stuff that I talked about before is a big one. I'm going to try not to rehash it too much. I think there's some more stuff I can touch on with that anyway, but that a big one has been the idea of blocking, as I mentioned, everything is aerobic, anaerobic, alactic. Again, because we can't isolate any of them. Other one would be around intensity, with how much we can really handle and how hard we can really push. And I think when people say they did a hard session or some kind of sprint session, very rarely is it like actually maximum. If you go and you do a proper sprint interval session, so one of the ones that we like to prescribe as like a baseline test is you do 2 sets of 30 seconds on with 60 seconds off. Typically on an air bike is usually the better option. And when I say 30 seconds on, it's not like when people do say, they go, oh, I just did 10 rounds of 30 on whatever.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, cool. You did literally just like cruised it. I'm
Yeah.
talking like from the very first second, you've absolutely hammered it and tried to get the fastest, highest speed as possible. And you've tried to just keep that up there for the entire 30 seconds. You should finish that 30 seconds so fucked you don't want to do another one. And then you have to do another one. And you have to do the same thing. That once you feel what that's like, you go, I don't get that in training. You know, you can do shark tanks, whatever you want. You will never feel the intensity you will feel from doing properly executed sprint intervals. And then the adaptations you get from that for conditioning, the physiology is another level on top of that, because you're just absolutely, I was going to use some random colloquial terms that probably wouldn't be good on here, but you're creating new mitochondria, you're improving the function of that mitochondria, you're able to better use oxygen in such a short time frame that it ends up being, and it takes less than 5 minutes, which is why it becomes such an important tool for combat athletes who are, for example, competitive jiu-jitsu guys who are training maybe twice a day, because you can get this done in less than 5 minutes. You don't have the fatigue that you might have from doing, say, a 40-minute conditioning session. So that's been a big one around intensity, in terms of what like real intensity is when it comes to like training and conditioning, and what you can actually handle. And that intensity isn't kind of like that boogeyman that's going to give you that fatigue, because people are kind of scared of like going really hard. They think, oh, my lactate is going up, so it's going to be hard to recover from, which is typically kind of what's taught around, I guess, coaching when we're talking about energy system development or conditioning for sports, even in rugby. We're trying to keep things aerobic, because if we go above this lactate threshold, that's when we start tapping into quote unquote anaerobic energy stores, and we become closer to fatigue, and then it's going to take you longer to recover. In reality, it just doesn't work like that. And when you're only doing 3 to 5 minutes with like a total work time of like 1 minute, you can see that you just can't generate enough fatigue in that 1 minute for it to have negative effects, you know, the following day or 2 weeks time, whatever it is. So that's been a big one. In terms of strength training, I don't know if there's been too much I've changed my mind on strength training. I would say one of the big things I try to do in, say, the professional rugby environment, when you have a team, I'd always try and marry what's happening, obviously not everything, but what's happening in the gym with what we're trying to achieve on the field in terms of speed. So typically when training like backs, I'll have them train kind of like track sprinter-esque. So everything is just geared towards speed. Obviously, you're still going to have some upper body work and stuff because they need to be in contact. Forwards would be slightly different. They'll be more kind of strength-based. Loosies I would have kind of as a hybrid. But I'll try and like marry the principles of what we're doing on the field with our speed stuff, with some of the stuff we're doing in the gym. So there's still some carryover and overload, and then things start to click in that aspect. So it's not always this, we do gym that is completely separate from what's happening on the field. Everything kind of comes together. I don't know if it's something I've changed my mind. It was just something that I kind of developed over time. Yeah, hopefully that answered that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just think there's like, especially with me, I've changed my stance on a few things. Obviously, the principles still pretty much stay consistent, and they will forever. But there are some kind of modalities and strategies that we sometimes use, and then looking back, we go, oh, that's probably, that was probably a bit too much, or that probably wasn't that relevant. So I always find that interesting. What is the biggest mistakes that you see, or maybe just one big mistake that people make on the mats as like a practitioner of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Like, I can think of a few, but obviously you have a better insight and you have, better expertise, and you've rolled with a few people worldwide. No, actually just their strategy as a BJJ athlete. Not necessarily how strong they are or like how fit they are, but just the way that they approach getting better at the sport. Now, I know you're not a professor, so I'm not asking for, their techniques are, I'm not looking for that. But I guess just like the mindset, because there are some people in class that just seem to progress week on and they get better. And then there are some people that have been doing it for years, regardless of what belt they are, because I'm starting to see that doesn't mean as much as you originally think. they just don't progress. And I feel like it's the way that they look at training.
Yeah. Well, I can even speak from my own experience. The biggest thing that's helped me is thinking in concepts versus like moves. And we have a really cool coach here at Val Jiu-Jitsu, Ryan Villalobos, and he has like he'll teach some moves, but everything's kind of concept based. We actually did a whole bunch of free instructionals. We made a Sweet Science of Fighting BJJ instructional YouTube channel, and we have like we just have like a whole lot of concepts and moves on there that we kind of just filmed. That's probably helped me the most in approaching things, because instead of thinking I need to hit this thing, it's like, okay, now you can think of the principle behind, hey, if someone's hips over my heads, that means the legs are there, or the legs are open, then I can enter the legs. Or during stand-up, whatever it is, I'm just trying to get inside position. If I have inside position, then I can do pretty much anything. Whereas someone's trying to attack me, I just know I have to deny them the inside position. So these are things I think that help. It's hard to do that when you're beginning, because it's just everything's a clusterfuck. It's like
there's no concept.
You're just trying to like not get choked and not get armbarred and stuff, and then all that. But as you start to progress, once you start thinking of those concepts in training instead of just trying to hit XYZ move, then I think things start to become easier and better. Obviously, it never becomes easy, but I mean.
I think there's carryover to that in fitness too, where so many people are fixated on exercises, as opposed to the movement pattern, for example, and they're like, "Oh, your chest is small, you have to do bench press." It's like, well, no, I don't. I don't have to do bench press. I could just do a horizontal push. That is free at a busy commercial gym. I could just do push-ups or like whatever. But that's a massive thing I see too. People are so romantic about exercises that have done well for them, or that they are really strong at, that they push it to other people. Like, you have to do this, instead of like the concept or the periodization or the program of it. But no one wants to think that deeply about it. So this is a bit of a clickbaity question, but I like it because it kind of purifies your thinking and the way that you think about exercise selection. If you could only do 10 exercises for the rest of your life, in terms of your goals, what would they be?
10, okay. Well, we can come back to your thing that you said. You don't need to do any exercise. Like, you just do whatever you can do. So machine-based stuff, whatever. But my top 10, I probably have. So pretty much a lot of the Olympic. I love Olympic weightlifting. That's just
I saw you. I saw you did that for NZ. Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife is a professional weightlifter. She's competed for South Africa for years, Commonwealth medalist and all sorts.
Awesome.
So we train together a lot. So for me, I love the power clean, power snatch, snatch for combat athletes.
Sorry, are you registering these as exercises? Because I'm gonna. Okay.
Oh wait, doing it one at a time, or you want me to just list them?
and why as well? Because I like to think why you like them.
All right, power clean. Just because you're moving moderately to heavy loads relatively quickly, plus the sequencing on top of them. Again, not saying that everyone should be doing Olympic lifts. If you're training for combat sports, you don't have to do them. For grappling, though, I think you could do far worse than learning the lifts well. But power clean, definitely up there with one of my favorites. Power snatch for the same reason. And that can be any variation. Floor, blocks, hang, whatever it is. Having to get, essentially, the bar moving quickly in one motion to overhead. Again,
sorry,
sequencing.
And for people that, let's say, just lift weights in commercial gyms, can you explain the movements?
Yeah. Power clean is from the floor to the shoulders, and then power snatch is just from the floor to overhead in one movement. Power just means you're catching it above, basically parallel, whereas the snatch and clean, you're catching the bottom position. In terms of other derivatives, snatch, high pull is probably one of my favorite, pulling movements for most athletes. That's just because you don't have any of the issue of the coordination of having to actually catch the bar overhead or anything like that. You're just literally pulling the bar up like a high pull. The wider grip makes it easier on the shoulders than, say, a clean high pull. And you have to violently and aggressively propel the bar vertically to do it. And if you do it well, you can heave you're heaving over your body weight in this position here, And if you think about the transfer to something like when you've got someone's back while standing, and you've got them in, I don't know, you've just got their back standing like a bear hug kind of position. That position becomes really damn strong when you're able to like use your hips and upper back to do that. So that would be another one. Push press. That is pretty much a staple in most of my programs, and that's been through rugby, through combat sports, and everything. Again, everything kind of comes from the floor, from your feet, so you're having to drive with your legs to get the bar overhead, and it ends up just being like a heavy full body pressing exercise. So that'll be 4. A one arm dumbbell row, done heavy and high rep, like croc row. That's like I hate doing them, but that's like one of my favorites. Just like like having some body English going and just like heaving a heavy dumbbell, doing that. That's just for like pure pulling strength and just like building a mass on your back. Same thing with weighted pull-ups or weighted chin-ups. That would be another one. And then in terms of
6.
Oh, yeah, go. Yeah, it's 6. And then a pressing one. So probably my favorite pressing exercise, which I actually need to do again, it's been a while, is a fat grip bench press off the pins at the bottom position. So just off the chest. That's easily my my favorite pressing exercise there. And that's just
Why?
like, that's heavily influenced. It's just fun. It's just raw strength. Like, can you press something off your chest? It's heavily influenced by, I don't know if you've read the book Dinosaur Training by Brooks Kubik. Probably my favorite training book of all time. It is so.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's more of a, I'm not going to say it's a motivational book, but the way it's written and you read it, you're like, I'm never going to do bodybuilding 10 reps sets, I'm just going to lift fucking heavy every day, That's what happens after you read it. but that, like, fat bars are like my favorite. I love doing everything with some kind of fat implement. Now that's 7. Another one would be a sandbag, kind of like bear hug carry, or just any kind of carry with the sandbag. And that's just because I think more people should be doing carries. You just develop a stupid strong back and legs and hips doing that kind of stuff. Outside of that, what else have I got? Oh yeah, just the squat, of course. I typically like front squats better. That's just my personal preference.
All right. Why is that?
I don't know,
Just because it challenges more? Because it's like, well, I personally find them so much harder.
Yeah, they just feel nicer in the groove than back squats. I
would say the bottom position feels a lot better. Like like I feel like anatomically you just sit into it, and you can sit at a nice depth, and you're like, oh, this is actually comfortable.
It's actually comfortable. Yeah, exactly. That one, and then I'm just skipping all the jumps and stuff like that because it's just whatevs. But front squat, and then I guess another one would be a hand-supported split squat with the safety squat bar. Those are fucking sweet. So if anyone's familiar with like the Hatfield squat, where you have a safety squat bar, which is just like, it's a specialty bar that has pads around. So it was designed for, I guess it was designed for powerlifters with shoulder problems. You would hold handles in front of you,
So you don't
and
have
then
to
the weight
reach
will be laid
out.
out the side. Yeah, so you don't have to hold the bar on your back or your front. And the nice thing about these bars is you can actually put them on your back. And you don't have to have your hands at all. So you can hold stuff in front of you, and you can do heavy ass squats all of that because you've got more things helping you, and you're more stable because you've got 4 points of contact. But you can do the same thing now with single leg work. So you do your single leg work like a split squat with your hands supporting you, and you can essentially you're just like overloading the shit out of your legs in a single leg position, which you typically can't do. So that would probably be 10. I probably missed a bunch, but those are the 10 on top of my head.
That's awesome. A couple of questions on the back of that. Do you like the pendlay row?
Yep.
Right.
I just I prefer the dumbbell version for.
What's the dumbbell version of the pendlay row? I've never seen
Well,
it.
not the dumbbell version. I mean, just like the one I'm dumbbell row done.
The single
heavy
arm
and high
dumbbell.
rep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm just saying this because personally, I've been falling in love with the pendlay row, and I think, I've been prescribing it a lot with clients, and there's been big carryover in terms of back growth and back strength. And I don't see it much in I'm not saying I'm in the bodybuilding space, but I'm focusing on body transformation. And although that's not, necessarily say the best exercise with the best stimulus to fatigue ratio, you know what I mean? But I feel like it feels like really primal. I don't like that word, but it kind of like, you're just ripping, like kind of like the high pull, you're ripping weight into your sternum or into your chest and then dropping it back down. It feels really awesome. And then I felt like when I grab and do like a bent over row or a single arm dumbbell row, or even like a prone, like a chest supported dumbbell row, the carryover is quite good. So I guess I was just asking for that because just to confirm my own bias because I like it.
I did them the other week. Actually.
And you can pull a decent amount of weight. Like it makes you feel strong.
Yeah, it does. And you can even do them like I've got in one of my jiu-jitsu programs on my training app, I have them do like a hybrid explosive deadlift pen lever. I don't know what you would call it. I just made up a fucking name for it, but it's just basically you're basically deadlifting and heaving it into you like a combo deadlift row. So it just means you can just literally pick something
even
up
more
and
weight.
Yeah, you're just trying to yank the shit out of it basically. And it's people say whatever, ego lifting or this and that, but when you get down to actually doing these exercises, like if you're damn strong at doing that, you're going to be damn strong at doing the same thing on the mats.
Yeah, I think the problem would be if you're meant to be doing a pendlay row, but you're doing the deadlift pendlay row combo, which is what I see. Like people are
like a barbell row.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what's your stance on neck training? Because we haven't really talked about that. You didn't bring that up. Do you think that's important for combat athletes to implement? I know it's pretty niche, but it is a pretty big topic. Like there's so many things coming out. Rogan talks about it. Huberman talks about it a lot. Neck training and like how how important it is. And like personally, a side story, I don't really train my neck. I feel like I get enough from jiu-jitsu, and I'm only doing it twice a week. I'm not a competitive athlete, all this kind of stuff. And I've been lifting for 17 years, so I feel like, there's been a relative like accumulation of some small type of neck gains. But I tried to put on a wedding shirt that I had from my wedding a couple years later. I couldn't put it on. Like I literally could. I did the top button up, but it sounded like, but it sounded like I was getting choked, right? I was like, so I had to go and buy a new shirt on the day of the wedding that I was attending, but never trained it. But just from doing jiu-jitsu, 2 to 3 times per week for a few years, my neck has actually grown. Maybe I'm just like constantly trying to push people away, and I'm just terrible, and I'm always getting smothered. But yeah, I'd like to know what your, I guess, concepts are around neck training.
Yeah. I usually just kind of forget to train my neck, to be honest, often. But yeah, if you have the time, you have to do it. Let me start with progressions, and then maybe I'll go into reasons.
Yeah, cool.
I've done a video on this ages ago on different progressions. So you typically I like to typically start with like lower level isometrics. So kind of like you can do your bands, and I've got my daughter knocking on the door.
I can hear that. I completely feel it. If you need to talk to them or something, like go ahead if you want.
Wife's out there, but
okay.
So do like isometrics, so 4-way, front, back, side to side, 10 to 30 seconds ish holds. And then also dynamic stuff, so neck flexion, neck extension, lateral, stuff like that. That would be kind of like level 1. And then I would also add, if you have, this is like an iron neck. I don't know if people know what an iron neck is.
Just explain.
It's basically like a device that goes in your head. It's like a halo, and it allows like 360-degree movement. So I
really
like
to a cable, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's just like a band.
Oh, okay.
And basically, I like to do 360 spins, so it's just like isometric all the way. And then my favorite neck exercise is that, but left and right. So I'll face away from the band and like look as far as I can left and right, and then I'll look towards the band and do the same thing. And you'll find like your neck mobility and how it feels is like fucking brand new. So that's like my number one go-to, because you're loading in range of motion. That's the key to anything to do with mobility and stuff. Like static stretching ain't going to get you that. Like load it in range is going to get you that. So that's one of those things that helps a lot with my neck. After that, you can go into heavier, I guess, dynamic movement, and then you can go into like more maximal isometrics. You might be going like 6 to 10 seconds, but you're actually like pushing your head against something. So even if you're holding like a band or a towel here, you're actually like pushing your head against it as hard as you can for that time. And then you can go into like reactive neck stuff, but typically you kind of need a partner to like push on your head different ways and stuff like that. And this more kind of niche to, I guess, striking versus grappling anyway.
Yeah.
But typically I like to train the neck mainly just for like restorative purposes. So as I mentioned, like the left and right and stuff, kind of just like restore some of that range of motion, makes it feel good. For other combat sports where there's kind of getting punched in the face and things, whether neck strength helps with like traumatic brain injury is kind of up for debate. But there's no real harm in doing it.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say
it's
like
kind
it
of
kind of makes sense, but yeah, I can see how it's like, yeah, it's not
yeah.
100%
So just
related.
kind of like you should it kind of should just be part of your program. I mean, you're using your neck all the time, and at least having some keeping it strong and robust and stuff is going to be a good thing, pretty much.
With the athletes, and this is more of I guess a kind of mindset question. With the athletes that you've dealt with, in all sports, with rugby and with combat sports and all the other sports you've dived into, what has been the biggest difference between a good player and a great star player?
Uh, what would be the biggest difference? Man, it's hard. It's hard to say because like people often say that hard work always beats talent. These kind of cliche sayings, but when you've been in that world, talent wins. Like, I can work as hard as I want. I ain't getting there. And some guys are just like some guys are that talented where they eat dog shit. They kind of train in the gym, but they don't really like it. But then on the field, they're animals, and it's whether that's the thing that separates it. I don't know. I will say as well, maybe the other ones that are quite good, kind of just they love the game and study the sport to the point where they're essentially masters and experts of the sport, and that's like technically and tactically. It's very rarely the ones that are the best in the gym or best in the conditioning test or whatever it is. It's usually the ones that understand the sport really well. They understand where they should be. They understand. I will say that they have knowledge of all the different scenarios and situations that can occur in a game, and when they're in those scenarios and situations, have the skill set to execute whatever it is to take advantage of it. So it's skill based, and then there's obviously the talent and genetic factor that's huge, but very rarely talked about.
Man, growing up in New Zealand, you feel that so early. Like, especially in like the area of, let's say, under 12s and like, where kind of like you're on the edge of puberty and then there's people that hit it really early. Like, for example,
Yep.
a lot of my mates, Samoans, Tongans, Maori dudes. I'm Maori, I'm half. But my dad was like a smaller Maori dude where there's like the mass, like my cousins are huge, they're absolutely stacked. But there's a lot of my friends were islanders and they had facial hair at like, under
Yeah.
12s, under 13s. I'm like, hey, I'm the same age as you. I look like your kid. And, and yeah, just the genetics and the talent
Yeah.
of them growing up. Like, I think as you get older, it does kind of fizzle out, and work ethic and time in the sport do really kind of, the more time you have in it, the more it plays out. But especially when you're kind of at that younger age, I guess is kind of what I'm referring to. That factor is like absolutely massive. But if you pair that kind of, let's say, genetic freak or really talented individual that just has that natural knack, if they put, yeah, I don't know, a little bit of work into that, they become absolute
Yeah.
animals, like you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, by work, it doesn't just refer to like people think work hard as in the training hard, but as I mentioned, like studying the game, like they understand it well. That's I guess that's work. And that's really what separates most athletes. Because you'll find it in all sports. Ones that just like don't do extracurricular strength and conditioning,
Yeah.
and that good. It's because they're so good at the damn sport.
Yeah, I got hooked on touch rugby. So that was like I
Dude,
played
I
rugby,
fucking love touch rugby. That was my jam.
mate. So I grew up in Christchurch, obviously, and I played for my high school. I went to Christchurch Boys High School, so I played rugby there, but then I kind of phased out and I focused on touch rugby because I just loved it more. And we went to nationals and all this kind of stuff. And then I played for Canterbury. I played for the Canterbury men's team. I was like 17, 18. I was like the youngest in the team. But just being around, like, I don't know if you know Scotty Grant and Nazer Silbury and stuff like they were my idols and my teammates. And I was like learning so much. But
Yeah.
like there's like I don't know if you know Nazer. He was the New Zealand
Nah.
captain. Okay, so he's the New Zealand
I
captain.
didn't follow that
Oh,
closely. I
okay,
played
yeah,
it.
right. Yeah, I could talk about this for
Yeah.
hours. But like he was like this naturally super fast dude, also very hardworking New Zealand captain, absolutely phenomenal. Then there was Scotty Grant, who invented shuts and corners. So he was literally like, he was the concept guy, and he was like, yeah, shuts and corners, like these guys pull this way, and he's like, but if this happens, this guy covers around the back, and I was like, I was just getting like my mind blown. But he was the kind of like mind dude, like the genius. But physically, he wasn't fast at all. But he was so slow. Like people would laugh because he was literally the slowest on the field. But he'd always just like scoop through, and he'd just be in the inbox with the ball, just like looking around because he invented the defensive system. So he was like, I know where to stand at the right time, and it was like polarizing to see the like let's say genetic freak, super super fast and talented, and then Scott, who was just like the brains behind it. But they were both killers in their own right, and it was really, I guess, interesting to see the two different pathways of people that could be really talented and at a national level sport.
Yeah, and then obviously there's you got to find. I guess you play to your strengths, and you got to find ways to get there. If you don't possess the other stuff, if you don't have the physical talent, maybe you have that brains, versus or vice versa. Maybe you don't need to use your brain at some point when you're playing rugby league or something. You're a prop. You're just running it straight.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, exactly. I got a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap this up. What are some golden nuggets you've heard from coaches, or maybe said yourself, or even some players that have really, I guess, changed the way you've operated or thought about things? Because you've been in a lot of different changing rooms, different tournaments, different sports.
Maybe a lot of it's from making mistakes in my own coaching stuff. So I guess one would be like if you hit a PB or PR, like cut the session, at least cut that thing. So I did one thing, we were pushing for speed PBs because he had like an injured upper body, and we were just like sprinting on the sideline. We hit a new speed PB, and then we pushed again, and then that's when hamstring goes ping, and I'm like, oh fuck. And then I was like, fuck, I'll never do that again. And so it's like stuff like that is, I mean, all coaches have stories of things they've done unfortunately with athletes. That would be one big one I've learned. And in terms of like,
sorry, also just like from a mindset perspective, you're also winning on a massive high as well, and you can just take that win, and
yeah, exactly.
Apart from getting injured, you could also not, you could not exceed it, and then you leave like, oh, I still hit a PB, but then I tried again, and then you kind of leave on that downwind.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just don't need to push it that much further. The other one, I guess, would be more coaching in general, and it's more so like you see how coaching is typically portrayed. It's probably it's not as bad in New Zealand. I think it's more in other places around the world, but coaching is kind of seen as this kind of like authoritative, kind of like dictator, tell you what to do. You do what the coach says. What the coach says goes, etc. Blah blah blah. But all of the successful coaching setups and all the successful teams have been part of, it's more of a collaborative approach. They're all striving to be an athlete-first approach, where the athlete has input on what they're doing in their training and giving feedback on what works well for them. And that's a big one too. It doesn't happen in a lot of countries, a lot of sports. But at the teams and sports that do it, some of the best in the world. I mean, you can even think of like the Crusaders in your region. They're ones kind of set up with that kind of athlete-first approach.
So where do you draw the line? Sorry, where do you draw the line in terms of like what the athlete can choose, and like where they don't? Because obviously you don't want them running the show because that's your expertise. But I like the element of them choosing something because I think there's some literature on it too in terms of lifting, like and personal training and exercise selection. They actually respond better, especially from a motivational perspective. If you don't say, hey, what do you want to do today for the session? But like, do you want to bench press or do dumbbell chest press? Then they've bought into what they're doing. It's the same shit basically. It's a horizontal push, whatever, upper chest, lower chest, all that kind of stuff. But you can, they feel like they're actually invested into it a bit more so.
Yeah. I mean, like if if guys are like relatively new to the team or new like younger players and stuff, yeah, they're not going to know. So that becomes less of a thing. But as you're talking to the players and you're kind of getting familiar with, I guess, their previous injuries and issues and things like that, then the collaborative process just becomes a lot easier with them. And it's not always about them kind of choosing it. It's just more like, even within like technical, tactical stuff, like providing frameworks. This is more like coaching related, so it's kind of more a little outside of S&C, but I guess the future of it is kind of all kind of one thing. You know, S&C should be part of the kind of coaching setup because it shouldn't be siloed things, which is another thing. But like it's like giving a framework for a team, and then the team or players trying to figure things out for themselves and letting them fail, and then talking them through and seeing what they thought happened or what they think they should do to fix it, and just giving them the framework to play and explore versus being like, do this. Because you don't want to create players that don't think. It's a very popular way, like kind of like the authoritarian way, I guess, in certain sports, like even like American football to an extent, but that's so coach driven that I guess it kind of works that way. But in sports like rugby, as an example, you can't be like, okay, we're gonna get the ball and then we're gonna make 2 passes here. We're gonna hit this ruck, then we're gonna go this way. You know, like you can't have a pre-planned thing. You play what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And to do that, you have like a framework of a game plan and a playing structure, but you're not telling them exactly what to do. And you need to let them explore and kind of figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, I feel like a common thread of your philosophy and what you've been talking about today is that everything works together, and that there's nothing in isolation. And that plays true to almost everything, but especially in coaching, and like even if you look at it, training, even nutrition, and basically life, it's like a principle, I guess, like everything works in isolation. It's not just about doing one thing and then, okay, we move on and then we do this thing, we do one thing, like everything's tied and everything has a ripple effect. It's been, I guess, a really interesting take to see how you think like that concept driven mentality as opposed to specific individual things that have to be good or else everything else is screwed type of thing. Last question that I like to ask, this is the Better with Brock podcast. I mainly created it around, becoming better, not just physically, but also, mentally. I'm a bit of a self-help nerd. Like I like books and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, last 3 questions. One thing you do every day to help you become better, a book that you thought helped you become better, and a quote. So 3 last things before you leave.
Unlock the door in case my daughter wants to come in because she's a bit nuts.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe she can help.
Yeah. Okay. I think she's in her room, but what was it? Okay, so one thing I do every day to get better. What's one thing I do every day to get better, dude? I don't know. I just do whatever I need to do on that day. That's probably a really bad answer. But basically, whatever's on my top of my priority list for getting work done or whatever it is, I just hammer that thing. And I just keep ticking things off my to-do list. That's pretty much the thing I do every day. I think
that's great. I think that's great. And to bring it back to, I guess, a book that I read, the first book that I read was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Yep.
I haven't read that. Yeah, and it's great. But the principle that I really loved and took away from that was put first things first, and ultimately that's what you're doing.
Oh, perfect. So I save some people some money. So.
That's only one habit, yeah. So a book.
A book on anything?
Yeah, like whatever you think fits, whatever's at the top of mind. I've taken dinosaur training away from you, so
dinosaur training's boss. Dude, I haven't read a book in so long. I used to read so many books, but like since doing all this business stuff, I'm just so busy creating content. I haven't read books, so I just read journal papers. But come help me decide on a book. What's a book that I've read?
What's your daughter's name?
It's okay. I wish I had my bookshelf in here because it has all the stuff in there. Training related, I can go. If you're looking at like sports performance strength conditioning stuff, Special Strength Training by Verkhoshansky is really nice. If you're looking more on the coordinative, more speculative end, which I think has had a really good, I guess, impact on my coaching philosophy, is what's it called? Franz Bosch's coordinative shit, I can't remember the name now. If you just search Franz Bosch coordinative book,
Okay.
that one is like kind of rooted in the stuff that I talked about earlier about letting athletes explore and fail. So it's rooted in like dynamical systems theory, where it's kind of like you're using you're in the jiu-jitsu world. You know all the big debates there was at the time when they're talking about constraints-led approach with ecological dynamics and all the stuff that was going on there.
No.
Oh, you didn't see that? Okay,
No.
there was like a
what year
there was like
that?
a huge. This was this year. It was only like a.
Oh, no, man. Sorry. I'm not deep enough in it.
It was basically people arguing over coaching styles, whether you should drill or you should just do like games.
Sorry, I did saw that, but I thought it was just kind of like like one gym's philosophy that was like, we don't drill, it's lifestyle, and then the other guys are like, you know, like Gordon Ryan, New Wave and all that, they're like drill, hour and a half a day.
So
yeah,
it's basically a highly studied area of teaching and learning, which would be ecological dynamics, and then obviously you have the other side, which is drilling. Obviously, nothing happens in isolation. Typically, you're not just doing one or the other. Some gyms just do games and stuff like that. And there's some really good resources on. I've interviewed quite a few people and friends with a few people in that space. But that Franz Bosch book kind of brings that constraints-led approach into physical training. So then you're basically manipulating the environment or the task to be able to get the outcome you want. So a really easy example was like with speed development. So I learned a lot from John Pryor. So he was the strength conditioning coach with Eddie Jones with the 2015 World Cup with Japan when they beat the Springboks, and they went 100% in on this kind of constraints-led approach to their training. And I was lucky enough to learn from him firsthand at a conference of different things. And it's just this idea of setting up exercises to allow athletes to explore and potentially fail, but to get the outcome you want. So typically in sprinting, like good maximum velocity, I guess sprint mechanics and team sports, you want that foot to come from above. So you want that foot to strike from the top down. So you might do constraints like putting rubber mats on the ground while they're accelerating, because if they don't have that foot come up, they're going to trip over the mats. And so you're forcing it through changing the environment versus telling them to do something. So that's a really cool book. It's a little wordy, sciencey maybe for a lot of people, but if you're into kind of like some of that more sports film stuff, that's a good one. And then what was the last question? A quote?
Yeah, a quote.
Dude, I don't even think I know any quotes. Like, for real. Is that funny? Dude, I actually don't have any quotes. I'm one of those people that hates motivational shit.
Right.
Like, I hate it. I remember when, like, coaches will come in, like, to locker rooms and they'll, like, have this, like, little shitty, like, Windows Movie Maker, like, motivational thing of, like, a lion and shit like that, to, like, get the players get up. I was thinking, like, I fucking hate this.
I'm pretty sure everyone hated that, too. That sounds terrible.
yeah. So, like, I don't have any, I just don't have any quotes. I just hate motivational stuff. It doesn't
you seem more like a just a person. Yeah. No, I like it. And I think, like, I am a motivational nerd in terms of books and stuff like that, because I felt like when I was early on and even just like figuring out what to do with my life, it gave me a bit of direction, right? So when I was young, I was like, I don't know what to do. I was reading books like this to get anything, right? You're from Christchurch, you're in this small city.
Yeah.
Everyone's just doing this same shit over and over again. Then an earthquake hits. You don't even know what's going on. So you're like, oh man. So I was kind of searching for answers, and it kind of helped me believe in myself to get out. So I feel like I have this relationship with it that got me out of it. Now I'm a bit older. I'm probably a bit more like you. I read more for purpose as opposed to get motivated. I'm like, right, I have two daughters. So I'm like, time is finite. I gotta, I'm not out here reading for leisure. I'm trying to read for purpose to make myself more intelligent, better at my field, whatever. So I really like that. I really like that idea. But mate, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's great to see Kiwis doing, great things around the world. Like I was saying, as soon as I heard your accent, I was like, ooh, it's a Kiwi. I gotta have him on.
I've had heaps of Kiwis.
It's really cool.
And, heaps of like old, I guess people I went through uni with and faculty members and stuff like that on my podcast, talking of the various, topics they're expertise in. So it's been cool. Just being like, it's been crazy. Heaps of Kiwis around, which is in the field as well, which is cool. And it's always nice getting like 2 Kiwis on a podcast. Whenever you listen to podcasts, it's always like Americans or British people.
Oh man, yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Don't forget, just send me the links where you talked about your BJJ instructionals and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
And then just so I can link it below, and then if people
Sweet.
want to check it out, they can. And yeah, so before we jump off, talk about your Instagram and your program just quickly, where people can find you, or if they want to learn from you.
Sweet Science of Fighting on Instagram. I post heaps of stuff on there, but the YouTube, I like the YouTube because it lets me do like real good long form stuff. So
Yeah.
you can find Sweet Science of Fighting on YouTube and Instagram, and then sweetscienceoffighting.com. And then if you want to see the jiu-jitsu instructionals, Sweet Science of Fighting BJJ instructionals is on YouTube, and then Sweet Science of Fighting podcast is also on YouTube and Spotify, etc. That goes through into a lot of the stuff really in depth. Those would be the main places. Yeah.
Awesome,
and then
man.
the training app. You'll find the training app and everything else all somewhere in those.
Great, man. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I'll let you go and enjoy your daughter time.
Cheers, appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, bro.